As we come up on Veterans Day, we want to honor our veterans, especially people like Robert Salas, who served on active duty with the U.S. Air Force for 7 years after graduation from the U.S. Air Force Academy in 1964. He earned a master's degree in aerospace engineering from the Air Force Institute of Technology, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. Remember that one? He also worked with the Titan III Missile Systems Program Office at Los Angeles, and after being honorably discharged from the Air Force in 1971, Mr. Salas briefly worked as an engineer for the Martin Marietta Aerospace Company and Rockwell International. From 74 until his retirement in 95, Mr. Salas worked for the Federal Aviation Administration as an aircraft structures engineer. Robert Salas, back on Coast to Coast. Robert, how have you been?
Well, hi, George. I've been fine, just fine. It's been a long time since I've been on Coast to Coast. Of course, then it was Art Bell.
It has been years. You're still doing mathematic teaching?
No, I retired from teaching also. And so right now I'm just putting all my focus in on this mysterious subject.
And mysterious it is. And your story is one of the most incredible stories of any UFO, UAP story I've heard. Tell us about what happened. What did you witness and when?
Okay, on March 24th, 1967, I was a missile launch officer assigned to Malmstrom Air Force Base. But on this evening, we were located at what we called Oscar Flight. We had control of 10 Minuteman I missiles, intercontinental ballistic missiles, nuclear, and well, sometime in the evening, I was in command. My commander was taking a rest break, and I got a call from the topside guard. He said, "Sir, we've been seeing some strange lights in the sky," and I'm trying to recall exactly what he said. It was pretty much what you probably heard in other places, but these lights were flying very fast, stopping on a dime, reversing course.
Yep.
Making 90-degree turns, no engine noise, but very strange lights. He said they were not airplanes. Sir, he was not kidding. He was not joking around. It was very professional.
You took him seriously, didn't you?
I did. I mean, I took the report seriously. It's just that I had no real interest in, at the time, I mean, I didn't think it was anything serious enough to really report these lights in the sky. I want to mention that the local newspaper in Great Falls, Montana, where Malmstrom is located, had reports of sightings of UFOs from the townspeople and also farmers out in the fields. And we'd see these from time to time in the newspaper. So at that time, I didn't take this subject seriously. So even though he gave me the report, I kind of joked about it a little bit and then said thank you and let me know when something more important happens. And we hung up. And then 5 minutes later, he calls back, and this time he's really frightened. I can tell by his voice he's extremely frightened. He says he's got all the guards out with their weapons drawn, and they're looking at a glowing reddish-orange pulsating light. He described it as a big light hovering above the front gate, and he wanted me to tell him what to do next. I think, well, he was very frightened. And this could be some sort of an assault,
an attack, sure.
I told him, and this time I took him very, very seriously, of course. There's no joking around here. And so I told him to make sure the security, the facility was secure, that nothing entered the fenced area of the what we call the launch control center.
And it's heavily guarded, isn't it?
Oh yeah, we had at least 6 guards, 7 guards up there at all times. And then he said one of his guards was injured and he had to go, so he hung up the phone. I'll talk about that a little bit more, but at that point, I was very, very nervous that we were under some sort of an attack upstairs. So I woke up my commander, of course, started talking about the phone calls, and then all of a sudden we hear these bells and whistles and horns go off in the capsule downstairs. We were 60 feet underground, and we were not allowed to open the large door of the capsule. Obviously, in case this was a physical attack,
Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't want to have anybody have access to those missiles.
It's like a bank vault, isn't it?
Yeah, right. So we looked over at the panel. We had a display panel that showed the status of the missiles, and sure enough, one of the missiles had gone down, and then very shortly thereafter, all 10 of the missiles had gone down. By down, I mean they were in unlaunchable status. They were all none of them could be launched at that point.
Without the codes, I guess.
No, it had nothing to do with the codes. The missiles had shut down. They were not operational at this point. With this object still up there.
Ah, okay.
So we went and checked. We had a way of checking the failure mode of each of the missiles, and they each read out guidance and control system failure.
How unusual is that, Robert, for the missile systems to go down?
Highly unusual. I was there for 3 years on active duty there as the missile launch officer, and this is the only time more than one missile went down, and for any reason at all. Now, I want to emphasize this was not any power failure. We had power the entire time.
And you have backup generators and everything else, I assume.
Absolutely. The missiles were triply redundant with regard to power. We had backup generators and also batteries that would take over the power load. So then we also had a couple of sites where we had what we call incursion lights, or possible intrusions into the launch facilities. Now, the launch facilities are where the missiles are actually located. The physical location of the missiles was about a mile or two away from the main capsule that we were located at. So that meant that I had to send guards out there to check that out. I called back up and talked to the main guard, asking first about the object, and he said it had just flown off at high speed. The man that was injured had cut his hand somehow. I never got those details because of the secrecy that surrounded everything after this incident. But it was not due to the UFO. It was simply due to either something to do with his weapon, or he cut his hand on the barbed wire fence that we had around this facility.
Robert, after the silos went down, what kind of meetings and discussions happened the day after?
Well, let me just tell you what happened. The day after, we were relieved by another crew sometime in the morning, and then...
a normal relief. You weren't being punished or anything, right?
No, this was routine.
Okay, standard.
We were down there for 24 hours and then relieved by another crew. And then we were ordered back to the base. We were helicoptered back and ordered to report to our squadron commander. We walk in there, and there was a man from AFOSI along with the squadron commander. The first thing I said was, what the heck was going on out there? Was this some sort of an Air Force exercise? Because I had no clue as to what had just happened. And he turned white as a sheet, said he had no idea either. So it was not. He assured me it was not an Air Force exercise, which we wouldn't do, of course, with operational missiles. They had to be operational at all times.
How long were the missiles shut down?
So the procedure was to go out, in this case, to send a targeting team out there to retarget the missiles and to it's a process because we had an inertial guidance system. We didn't have GPS satellites at that time, so the guidance of the missile after launch was calculated through the inertial system. In other words, we had gyroscopes, we had accelerometers, velocity meters, those kinds of things to calculate the to calculate the route the missile would take on target. So that had to be reset. In other words, the missile had to be reoriented, and the guidance system had to be reset, and that sort of thing. It took about, I'm sure it took about a full day to get all the missiles back up on alert.
Wow. I mean, that must have had the brass scattering, huh?
Oh, it sure did. Yeah, we had reports that the brass from Senate headquarters at Offutt Air Force Base were out there the next day, and these are letters and reports we got from various people that have written to us. So it got a lot of attention. However, I just want to backtrack a little bit. After my commander called the command post when the missiles went down, he turned to me and said the same thing happened in another flight of missiles. And I thought he meant that evening, but as it turns out later, I would find out after doing my research that that was the Echo flight incident, which happened 8 days earlier.
Explain that, Robert, if you can. Explain
that happened on March 16th, 1967, about 8 days prior to our incident. It's a very similar incident. Retired Colonel Walt Fiegel was in command at this other flight when one of his missiles went down. He had a couple of crews out in the field that had spent the night out there because they were doing regular maintenance on two of the missile sites. And he called out there and said, what are you guys doing? You're not supposed to start until I give you the okay. And I said, we didn't do anything. By the way, there's a UFO just above us. And so they reported UFOs. He also sent his guards out there, and they reported UFOs back to him also. So we had quite a few people reporting UFOs over those sites, and then all 10 of them went down rapidly. So within the span of 8 days, we lost 20 nuclear missiles during UFO encounters.
Robert, you waited 27 years to go public with this. Was there a reason you waited so long?
Yeah, I was about to tell you that when I was in the office with my squadron commander, this man from AFOSI was also there and ordered us to sign these non-disclosure statements that we would never talk to anybody about the incident that happened to us, and that was, in perpetuity. He said you can't talk to your wife, your spouse, your family, anybody in the Air Force, nobody, without breaking the law and spending a lot of time in jail.
And I'm sure they meant it, didn't they?
Oh yeah, it was in writing. Actually, they actually had Leavenworth Prison written in that NDA.
Robert, as you look back now, what do you think the occupants of these UFOs were trying to prove to us?
I think they were trying to send a message, and this message was simply to, in my estimation, to get rid of these devices, these nuclear weapons, because obviously, I think it's obvious now that these can't be used in war. President Truman said that, and a lot of other people have said that. We can't really have an all-out world war again with nuclear weapons because they're so destructive. That goes into a lot of the discussion I put into my new book on deterrence, on the fallacy of this philosophy or theory we have of building up nuclear weapon storage, storing a lot of nuclear weapons as a deterrent to nuclear war.
Exactly.
It's a fallacy because it has resulted in kind of a race for who has the most nukes. And it's also inspired other countries to want nuclear weapons. So at this point, we have about 9 nations that have nuclear weapons. 2 of those nations are at war with each other right now. It's Pakistan and India. They're fighting over the Kashmir region and have been for some time. They're both nuclear powers. And as you know, we've been threatened with the use of nuclear weapons by Russia and North Korea. And
Robert, we're going to take a short break. We'll come back and chat more. Next hour, we'll take calls with you. Robert Salas with us. His latest work is called UAPs and the Nuclear Puzzle. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with Robert Salas. His latest book is called UAPs and the Nuclear Puzzle. We will take calls with Robert next hour here on Coast to Coast. His website is linked up at coasttocoastam.com. He's also got a YouTube presence and Facebook as well. Robert, do you truly think in your heart that if some nation was prepared to launch nukes against another nation, ETs would step in and stop the launch?
Well, I have no idea what they would do, of course. They have proven that they have shown that they can do exactly that.
They can do that.
Our weapons.
That's right.
But the question is now, there's 2 possibilities. One, they might want us to have a nuclear war to emphasize the point that these weapons are horrific and highly destructive. Of course, we know that. But we haven't gotten to the point where we've taken seriously the idea of taking them all down, abolishing them. There's no point, as I see it, in having these weapons of mass destruction. They are pretty much doomsday machines for every living thing on the planet.
I wonder if they went through this themselves.
That's I thought of that too. If they're an advanced civilization, they probably had conflicts among themselves, such as what we're going through now, and maybe developed nuclear weapons themselves, and realized that the insanity of the whole thing, and gotten rid of theirs. So that seems to me a possibility.
You've got some of our dear friends that have written snippets for your new book: James Fox, Thomas Carey, the late Stanton Friedman. I miss that guy. Donald Schmidt. Yeah. You've got some heavyweight hitters, and Leslie Kane wrote the foreword to your book. It's well done. Yes. It's well done. But you feel as if after 27 years, they're not coming after you for revealing this anymore.
No. I went first on a national radio on this show with
Art Bell. That's right.
In November of 1996. And before that, I gave a interview to the Great Falls Tribune, and it got front page right up on this very incident. So, no, if they were going to come after me, I think they would have done it by now.
What was this covered up by the government?
Absolutely. After the Echo incident on March 16th and then my incident on March 24th, we were never told about these incidents during our briefings. Every time we went on alert, we'd have a briefing of the crews to let them know what was going on in the field, any testing or any anomalies that were happening, and we never heard a word about this in the 2 years after that I was still there at Malmstrom. It was definitely a cover-up. Like I said, we had to sign NDAs. We couldn't talk to the guards. The guards called me the next day and begged me to come see him and talk to him about, what had happened. And I couldn't meet with him because I was ordered not to.
How many of our different missile bases have had this happen to them now?
So I was going to mention the David Schindel, who is another witness, had an incident where he relieved the crew that all their missiles had been shut down during a UFO incident at Minot Air Force Base, and that was in 1966. There was another incident in 1968 at Minot. We've had incidents at many of the nuclear bases, Ellsworth, Francis E. Warren, and all these are listed in my recent book and previous books. I think I've accounted for about 13 such incidents or similar incidents.
Huge.
All over the world, actually.
Robert, if a plane were approaching one of our sites, a plane flying in, how far out would it be before we knew about it? And then what precautions would we take instantly? What's the procedure?
We did have a radar that covered sensitive areas. Flight restrictions are part of these areas. In other words, we can't have either civilian or military aircraft flying over these areas. We have radar monitoring, and we have scrambled jets against these objects before at Malmstrom. I know we actually had a fighter interceptor squadron located right there at Malmstrom, so they would be intercepted.
In this particular case, with the UFOs, we never scrambled, did we?
I I don't know those details for these particular cases. I do know that we have scrambled jets, interceptors against UFO sightings at Maelstrom at different time periods.
What has been the reaction, governmental-wise, to what you've been saying over all these years?
Well, that's interesting. I don't know if you recall, I think it was June of last year, where there was a hearing.
Mm-hmm. You were there.
A House hearing. You were there?
You were there.
No, I'm not talking about, I was not there. But Congressman Gallagher brought up the Malmstrom case to Assistant Secretary of Defense Moultrie and Mr. Bray. I'm not sure where he was from. I think he was from an intelligence agency. But at any rate, they at that time claimed that there was no official reporting of this, and they had no in-depth knowledge of the Malmstrom incidents. But Gallagher did ask them to look into it. So earlier this year, in February, I did give a complete briefing to Arrow, and it is now an official historical record. I've got notification of that from Arrow. So any congressman or senator that wants to look into the details, I have presented, I think, 22 pieces of evidence and gave a long presentation, about a 2-hour presentation. So any congressman and senator that wants to have access to that should be able to get it, I would think, because it is now an official record, historical record of my testimony. And that goes for David Schindele also, and Robert Jacobs. Robert Jacobs had the incident outside of Vandenberg Air Force Base in 1964 when he was able to videotape UFO flying circles over one of the test warheads that had been launched from Vandenberg Air Force Base on an Atlas rocket.
Why do you think, Robert, the ETs, that's what I'll call them, did not annihilate our missile sites then? Just simply blew them all up.
Well, I can think of a couple of reasons they might not.
They could have. They had the capability.
They would have caused a serious incursion or intrusion into our defense system, and I don't know that they want that. So they may have a policy of non-interference with what we're doing and just monitoring what we're doing and sending us a message now and then, which I think that these incidents, and like I said, there have been many worldwide incidents where they've just flown over nuclear weapons storage areas and shown a beam of light and flown off. And these are simply, I think, messages of their concern for our nuclear, the fact that we have nuclear weapons and have not seen the light to get rid of them.
It is truly remarkable. It's probably one of the greatest UFO stories I think I've ever heard. Has your life changed since this happened?
Well, I think it has. I've spent a lot of time on this. Speaking on podcasts, radio shows, television shows, et cetera, writing books, And in that sense, I've had pretty much a commitment to revealing this to the public for over 30 years. So that part of my life certainly has changed.
I would consider you, Robert, one of our American heroes for coming forward, for having the guts, and for telling this incredible story to us.
Well, thank you for the compliment, but I don't consider myself a hero. I'm doing this as a responsibility that I believe I have because it happened on my watch, right? I was there. I owe it to the public to tell everyone, the world public, about this, and so I'm not done. I'm going to keep at it until, first of all, our government recognizes this publicly, which they haven't really done yet, and then work for the abolishment, like I say, of nuclear weapons. And we can't, like Oppenheimer said, we cannot believe that this can't be done.
Are you glad you were working that day?
Am I glad?
Yeah. That you were there?
I don't, I can't say I was glad. I'm, like I said, it happened on my watch, and therefore it's my responsibility to report it to the public.
Truly a remarkable story. And
yeah.
What has the perception been from the public to you and your story over the years?
Yeah, I think I've gotten a lot of support from the public. I'm on social media, on Facebook and X or Twitter, and I've got a website. The public's been very supportive throughout the years for the most part. Certainly I've had some detractors, but anybody that wants to see what evidence I've got or I've collected can go to my website, spiralgalaxy.org, and click on the link that says Malmstrom Incidents, and they'll see quite a bit of evidence, including audio testimony from my commander, Fred Mywald, and Walt Siegel, who was the commander at Echo Flight during the incident, and his commander in writing. So I've got various documents I received under the Freedom of Information Act, which I've also included in my first book, Faded Giant. So I think I've got a complete story out there for anyone that really wants to look into it.
What have your friends and family have said about this?
Well, it varies, of course. This is a paranormal subject, meaning it's hard for some to swallow. Some of my, for example, one of my close relatives is a highly religious person that thinks that these could be demons from hell or that sort of thing, and they're entitled, of course, to believe what they want. Anybody is. We don't have all the answers, so there's a lot of speculation surrounding this. So I think my family, my immediate family, covers the spectrum of beliefs about this subject as in the general public.
Amazing work. Well, stay with us, Robert. We've got an hour of phone calls with you. When we come back in a moment on Coast to Coast, Robert's website is linked up at coasttocoastam.com, and we will be back with your calls next.